Hello, everyone. Welcome to our webinar this afternoon. I've got straight up 2 o'clock here, but we do have some more people coming in right now. So if you'll be patient with us for just a minute, I think we'll give folks coming in just another minute or two, and then we'll get started. So hold on here for just a second, please. Okay, folks, we've still got a couple more people here coming in, so I'm just going to give us another minute, let them get in here, and then we will go ahead and get started. So we'll be back with you here in just a few seconds. Okay, so I think we will go ahead and get started. So first, welcome everyone. We certainly appreciate you taking time today to join us and want to welcome you to our webinar today on what is Microsoft's Power Platform. A couple of just real quick housekeeping items here before we get started. All attendees are in listen only mode. We certainly do encourage questions, and we will take questions at the end of our session here. But if you have any questions throughout the presentation, I would like to ask that you submit those through the GoToWebinar question box. And again, we'll answer those right at the end of the presentation here. We are also recording today's presentation. You will receive an email tomorrow with a link to the recording of this session. Today we've got Aaron Moon, a D365 CE and Power Platform consultant here at Velosio with us. He will be providing today's presentation. I'll be back at the end of the presentation to facilitate any questions that you might have. So I think that's really it for housekeeping. So without further ado, I'm going to turn things over to Aaron to get us started.
All right, thank you so much. Appreciate the introduction there. So today we are talking about Power Platform, and what it is, understanding how we can use these tools that Microsoft is putting out to transform your processes and connect data that may be disconnected. So as Rocky mentioned, if I can advance my slide here, my name is Aaron Moon. I'm a Power Platform and Dynamics 365 CE consultant here at Velosio. I've been working with the Dynamics 365 suite of applications, sales, customer service, project service, other XRM solutions. So with our clients that have Dynamics 365 CE or customer engagement. But recently, sort of towards the end of 2018, I started focusing on Power Platform and these tools underneath the banner of the Power Platform. And how we could use those tools. First, since I was working with Dynamics 365 CE clients, trying to figure out how these tools could help my clients in that space. But as I've been working with it throughout the course of this year, it's really expanded. And we've begun to get the chance to work with lots of different clients using lots of different applications, Dynamics 365 F&O or BC, even GP or SL. So, today, again, we're going to talk about Power Platform. I want to try to give you some examples from clients that I've worked with, ways that we can use these tools. First, though, I want to start painting a backdrop um, with this idea of disconnected technology. So on the slide here, you'll see a representation of a professional services organization, and you'll see all the different work areas represented here. You'll have sales and marketing. You got your back end work areas, things like accounting, and perhaps you have project management. Again, if you're professional services org, and all of these different areas are going to have their own technology. Typically, these are systems that are not connected together, and when we have processes that cross these areas and we need to pass information back and forth, that's where we can encounter problems. And so this next slide shows some of those issues that you may relate to due to disconnected technology and systems. So starting at the top left, you've got multiple UX or UI models. And for me, this is to do my job, I have to work in this system, but I also have to work in this system. And switching back and forth between different places can be confusing, can slow you down. You have to remember, how do I do this again in this tool, right? And so when you have multiple systems, multiple user experiences, that can tend to slow your users down, can slow you and your processes down. Having multiple systems that may be disconnected can cause IT and administration problems. There may be manual processes that you're doing to bridge gaps between the different systems that you have. And when you have manual processes, you introduce the opportunity for error, for human error. So when we're talking about manual, you're entering something, you could be fat fingering it or doing something to manipulate what's there because it doesn't quite do what you want it to. And so all of these things sort of come together and really focus on the bottom right image here, which is poor business insights. So we have these issues, but what we're trying to move toward, and what a business is looking for, is to get insights from the things that we're doing, gather data about the processes, and try to understand how we're doing so that we can then make decisions on how best to move forward. And so when you have poor data because people are doing things manually, or perhaps the process isn't very fast and you're getting information too late, it's going to cause poor business insights and ultimately cause poor business decisions. So just wanted to paint this backdrop of disconnected systems and technology, the problems that are caused there. And then now I want to talk about how we at Velosio would address these problems. And we have to start sort of with at the base, at the ground level. And that really, for us, is the Microsoft suite of applications, the intelligent cloud. And that really begins with the Dynamics 365 applications. So things like sales, customer service, project service, F&O, finance and operations, talent for HR. These are really the base. And we start with these because you can install one of these applications. It's going to be an online application that's going to give you a lot of functionality right from the start. So you may be able to solve a lot of the problems that you might have today by installing and beginning to work with an application in this suite. When we have that in place, then we can begin to look at additional pieces that can plug in to these modules. So we have point solutions out on the Microsoft App Source. So a specific solution for an industry or a specific scenario, we can go out there and browse and find companies that have developed something specific for your industry or your scenario. It's then very easy to take something from that app source and install it and plug it into the Dynamics 365 application that you may have. We can also look at collaboration and communication tools within Office 365, so connecting in Outlook and all of those tools that exist there. We also have more technical tools that can be used to extend these applications. So like the Common Data Service for storing data, Microsoft AI, or Azure Services. These are tools that we can use to bridge gaps when we come across them. And finally, the last piece is the Power Platform. And again, there's three pieces. We're going to talk about these today, but these tools are focused on being cost effective and efficient tools that can allow you to develop solutions to again reach to places that perhaps you haven't been able to reach to before, or bridge gaps. They're very powerful. And this entire ecosystem is at our fingertips. It's the capabilities of all of these components that allow us to address the problems that we saw just a second ago caused by disconnected technology. So today we want to dive into the Power Platform tools in particular, and how these tools can help us to enable digital transformation and connect these things that might be disconnected. So when we break out these three tools, we have Power BI, Microsoft Flow, and PowerApps. Power BI is your business analytics tool. So it allows you to aggregate data from multiple places, pull it into a data model, and then create visualizations of that data so that you can see it and understand it. Microsoft Flow is an online workflow automation service that allows you to do things like send and receive notifications, synchronizing files, moving around and working with data, doing approvals. There's a large number of things that Flow can do, and it's very easy to use and set up. Finally, we have PowerApps, which is not just one tool, but a suite of application building tools, services. You can see connectors. It comes with a data platform, and all of these things allow you to build business applications quickly without writing code. So today I'm going to dive into each one of these, and I want to start with Power BI. So again, what is Power BI? It's sort of like PowerApps. It's not just one thing. It is a collection of services and tools. It has multiple different connectors. So again, when we talk about wanting to pull your data in and do reporting on that data, it has the ability to grab data from an Excel file. It could pull it from the internet, from an online source, or it connects to databases. So we're able to take all of these different data sources and aggregate them together and turn that into a data model, relate the data together in a model that can be used and that we can easily understand. And then on the front side, it has a great tool for creating visualizations. It's very easy to use and allows even end users, business users, to create visualizations and reports within its online service. And it doesn't require a IT or BI specialist to build these reports and dashboards. This tool has been around since 2015 now. So of the three tools we're talking about today, it is the most mature, and it's really become pervasive. There's a lot of people using this tool, and Microsoft has invested a lot of money in this tool. And to give you an idea of where Microsoft is in this analytics and business intelligence or BI space, I want to show you here the Gartner Magic Quadrant. So this is actually from February of this year, and if you're not familiar with Gartner Magic Quadrant, this is a company that evaluates products and companies within a certain space, and then identifies, ranks them and identifies who is the leader in this space based on their completeness of vision and the ability to execute on that vision. And it might be a little small, but I have Microsoft here right at the top. So they are the leader far and above in this space. And again, this is just from this year. So Power BI, again, is their sort of flagship tool right now that allows businesses to easily pull in data and create visualizations and reports to understand that data. So that's Power BI. I'm not going to cover any more on that. I want to get into the next two pieces, which are Microsoft Flow and PowerApps. These are the newer tools that Microsoft is investing a lot of time in. So let's first talk about Microsoft Flow. So Microsoft Flow, again, is an online workflow service, and it allows you to work smarter by helping you to automate your processes. So again, I mentioned doing things like notifications, moving files, collecting data, doing different manipulations of data, and also approvals. It has a very strong approvals engine. And these flows are built easily with a visual designer, and it doesn't require the help of a developer. You can build these without writing any code. It's clicking and dragging. And there's always going to be a trigger and then an action with flows. So something will cause the flow to start. That's the trigger. And then there's always going to be at least one action, but there can be multiple. So we're going to get into here some ideas for flow. But I want to start by saying there are hundreds of templates that exist. You can go out to the Flow website and browse through these templates to try to get an idea of what you could do with Flow. And if you have a thought, I wonder if I could do this, you probably can. The answer is probably yes, and someone might have already done it. When you click on one of these templates, it's going to create a flow for you. You might have to approve access to whatever the service is that you're connecting to, but once you do, you can turn that flow on and it will begin to work right away. So you can see all the different logos that I have here on the screen. They are all over the board. We have Facebook and Twitter. We have those social media connectors. We have, of course, Microsoft tools like Office. We have Dynamics. We have SharePoint, but we also have things like Google. You can see a Google Drive, GitHub, MailChimp. There are hundreds of these connectors that you can begin to use today. So you'll notice, on some of these templates are fairly simple. For instance, the Facebook example is post to a Facebook page if a post on my timeline contains specific words. So I'm gonna, make something up. If I could set this up to say, if a post on my timeline says happy birthday, then I want to post to another Facebook page. And if you break that down into flow terms, the trigger is the happy birthday post on my timeline. And then the action would be the post to another Facebook page. And that's really simple. It's two steps, the trigger and the action. But within Flow, we can get very complicated. We can do advanced scenarios, do for all, looping, branching, and much, much more. So you can really expand Flow. While it's very easy to build these and get started, you can expand it and take it to the extreme where it can be very complex as well if you need it to be. If you come up to a point where you can't do something with Flow, you can actually export flow and import it into the Azure Logic Apps tool, which is an Azure service for doing workflow and integration automation. And Logic Apps with Azure Logic Apps is really Flow's big brother. And so you can actually export it, import into that tool, and then begin to inject code and different things if you hit a point where Flow can't do whatever it is you're trying to do. So now we've talked about sort of what Flow is. I want to show you an example of how you can do an approval process with Flow. So the scenario that I'm going to walk through here is that I am a resource who needs to get a document approved by my manager. Okay, so I want my manager to look at this document and say, yes, it's good to go. So what I'm going to do is I've uploaded that document into a SharePoint document library. So I've stored this in SharePoint where my team can access it. And what I'm going to do is select the document, and then in my command bar at the top, I'm going to have an option for Flow. And when I click the Flow drop down, I have the ability to select and start a flow basically on this document. Okay, so I'm going to choose my demo is a request manager for approval flow. And when I do that, it's going to open up a window on the right-hand side. I'm not sure if you can hear the thunderstorm that's happening outside my window. Apologies for that. I was just talking about earlier before this how it wasn't raining. So when I start this process, I get a window on the right-hand side that allows me to enter a message to my manager. And I can put in something like, please review the second paragraph for approval, something to that effect. And when I hit run flow, it's actually going to kick off the flow, and that's going to be the trigger for the flow. And it's going to begin doing actions in the background. And the first action that's going to happen is it's going to send an email approval request to my manager. So we've now flipped perspectives, and we're now putting our managerial hat on. And within my Outlook as a manager, I get this email that says approval request, and it lists the document name, what document it is. And it may be a little bit small, but I've in the body of the email included the message that I had written out. So if I had said, please check the second paragraph, I could see that here in the email. And then I also get a link to that document. So I can easily click on that link, open up the document in Word, review it, and then even come back to the email here, and I have the ability to approve or reject this request right here from my email. So as a manager, I don't have to leave Outlook. I don't have to go to SharePoint. All I have to do is work within Outlook here. I can click to open that link if I need, and it'll open in Word. And it's very easy for me to make a quick decision on whether or not this is approved or denied. Now, before we approve this, I want to show you it actually shows up, this approval request shows up in two other places. And the first one is in the Flow portal or the Flow website. So if you go out to flow.microsoft.com, you can see here I've got a screenshot of the approvals area. And still look with our managerial hat on, I've now got this approval that's shown up here. I can click on it, and on the right-hand side, it'll show me all of the details. Again, my comments, the link to the document, everything that I might need. And then I can also approve or reject here. And then thirdly, the third place it shows up is in the Flow mobile app. So Flow has a mobile app you can download on iOS or Android. And it will also show you this approval there on your app. So if I'm on the go, I can open up the app, see my approvals, look at the details. Even, if I have Word, a document viewer on my phone, I can click to open the document, see it, and then decide to approve or reject. So it's very easy to do this approval process. When I do choose to approve or reject, I am given the option to put in a reason. So if I reject, I'll want to say why I'm rejecting. But then the final action of the flow is to send an email back to the original employee who requested that approval. So if it's approved, we'll get an email like you see here that says it's been approved, your request has been approved, and here's even a link back to the document and any a reason that my manager may have provided. It would look exactly the same for a denial, though it is important to point out here that these emails that are being sent back and forth by Flow can be customized. I can put in whatever information I need into this email and make it say exactly what I want it to say. So hopefully that's a good example of a flow and an approval process using the Flow engine. I do want to show how I actually built this flow with a quick screenshot. So this here is the Flow Designer. So this is a screenshot. I'm in the editing mode right now, and this is what it looks like. It's very visual. You can see each of the lines. The first line is the trigger for the flow. So when that file is selected and the flow is triggered, and then the following lines are the actions that the flow is going to take. I want to point out the logos on the left-hand side. We are accessing multiple different areas. We're accessing SharePoint, Office 365. We're pulling in who my manager is. We're accessing the Flow engine. And then finally down at the bottom, we're sending an email response. So you can see at the middle step here, we've got the conditional statement that basically says after that approval started, it's waiting for the response. And if the approval is approved, if the request is approved, then we go down the yes branch and we go to send the approved email. But if it was rejected or denied, we would go in that no branch and send a different email with a different set of information. So it's very easy to create a flow, very quick. It is visual like this. Again, not writing any code. I'm clicking and adding these actions in here and setting these up. Okay. So the next piece I want to talk about, which is probably my favorite, is PowerApps. So again, PowerApps is a suite of apps, app building tools and services. It's got connectors to connect to your data, but it also has a data platform, and that's what I want to touch on first, is this data platform. And we refer to it as the Common Data Service for Apps. You may have heard that term before, but this is really an online data store that you can begin using to store your data. And it comes with a common data model. So it comes, when you spin up one of these databases, it's going to come with a set of standard business entities that represent standard business scenarios. So it's going to come with this model that you can begin to push data into right away. You don't have to do any additional setup. It's going to spin up with this data model. However, we can extend that common data model, and we can include things like additional fields or properties. We can expand the relationships within that data model, and we can also build custom entities to represent your custom scenario, or if you have your own custom application, we can build the custom entities to hold your application's data and support your data model. And so this model sort of sits on top. It's a layer that we're able to access and visually manipulate, but it's all being stored in that operational data store, which is just an Azure SQL database on the back end. But along with this common data model, we also get a number of other pieces of functionality. We have an enterprise security model that can support row level security and even model security hierarchies. We also have the ability to import and synchronize your data into this common data service utilizing Power Query. If you're familiar with Power BI or Excel, you may be familiar with Power Query. And we can pull data from cloud or online services, as well as get at on-premise data utilizing on-premise data gateways that we can install. We've got the ability to plug in pro dev tools and extend this common data service. But ultimately, we've got the Power Platform tools that connect in and can utilize this data. So Power BI can connect to the common data service as a database, pull the data, build reports and dashboards off of that data. Microsoft Flow can interact with this data, be triggered by events within this database, or manipulate data within the database. And ultimately, PowerApps can be built on this database. It can be the place where it holds its data. And so that's what we want to continue talking about now, is PowerApps and what we can do with them. So PowerApps start with your data, which again may be in the common data service, or it may be in another online service or another place. And we do have the ability we have connections to pull in that data wherever it may be. But then once we have that data source, we can begin to build our app, and we do that in the PowerApps Studio, which is an online studio. You pull it up in your browser. You're going to build these, again, without using code. You can then just publish those to people that are within your organization, and then they can access those either from a browser, on a laptop or desktop, or even from a mobile device. There is a PowerApps mobile application that's available for iOS and Android. So before we get too far into PowerApps, we have to talk about the two different types. There are two different types of PowerApps, and we want to make the distinction between these two. So first off, we have Canvas apps, which really start with your user's experience. You begin building these apps and you start with a blank canvas, which is where the name comes from. So you're starting with this blank page, and then you're going to click and drag and resize and change the colors and make the app look exactly like you would want it to be. And this designer experience is what we refer to as WYSIWYG. What you see is what you get. So as you're building it, you are building it exactly how it's going to look when you go to run that application. These Canvas apps, however, are tend to be task or role based. There's more smaller, purposeful applications to do a particular process or some particular steps, maybe for a particular person or group of people. But something that's very powerful about these apps is that you can pull in data from all of those different data connectors that we talked about. So on one screen of your application, we could have data being pulled in from Dynamics 365 F&O. We could have data being pulled in from SharePoint, from Office. We could have multiple sources of data all coming together on one screen, and your end user, the person who's using that app, does not have to know the difference. So very, very cool. On the flip side, let's talk about model-driven apps. So model-driven apps start with your data model, and that data model is the common data service for apps. When we talked about that data store, these are built off of that common data service database. And so, in contrast to the Canvas apps that connect to hundreds of data sources, the model-driven apps are really focused on connecting to that one data source, the common data service. There are ways to pull in data, get data in from other places, but it's not the same experience. But it is really focused on, again, you build your data model, and then you can model those relationships and business processes. And these applications are more robust and can support end-to-end, enterprise scenarios that might have multiple different teams all working in one application potentially. Now, where Canvas apps were, WYSIWYG, you're building it how you want it to be. Model-driven apps, you're going to use a model user interface that is provided by Microsoft. So I'm going to show a couple screenshots later on. This interface is familiar to those who might be using Dynamics 365 today and the newest versions. It is coming, the Microsoft is providing their Dynamics 365 interface for these applications to use. And so you're going to work within the bounds of that interface. There are some things you can configure and change, but it's not the same as Canvas apps where you're clicking and dragging and making it look exactly how you want it to look. So those are sort of the two, the pros and cons between the two. I do want to dive into each of these and show you what it looks like to build them. So let's start by talking about Canvas apps and what it looks like when we're building these. So I've got a screenshot. It may be a little bit small, but this is of the designer experience for Canvas apps. You'll notice that in the middle, there is that white space where we're beginning to build our application. That's the blank canvas. And then we're going to add components, click and drag things around. So we've added those 4 fields there. And we can begin to change the color of those things. We can change the size, where they are on the page. We can even do things like, hiding and showing, and having them react in certain ways, whatever we need them to react. And we do that using an expression language that was made for PowerApps. However, those expressions or formulas are actually coming from Excel. So there's actually a number of Excel formulas that are exactly the same. You can use those same formulas within PowerApps. So if you're familiar with Excel, you can pick up a number, there's a number of simple formulas within PowerApps that you could automatically get in there, understand, and work with today. So Microsoft is providing this tool, and the familiarity with Excel or PowerPoint, things like that, is going to help you jump into these quickly. And again, we mentioned these can pull in data from lots of different places. So aggregating that together. A couple of points here again on the screenshot. You got the blank canvas on the right and the left. However, you do have properties. So again, that's where we're changing the colors and changing the different things of our components and organizing our app. So we mentioned the data sources a couple times here. Again, there are hundreds of connectors to different cloud services, databases. We do have the ability to connect to on-prem data using our on-prem data gateways that we can install. And if you have a proprietary system or you don't see your logo here, you can always create custom connectors. Microsoft has made this available so that people can build connectors and allow apps to access their services. So I want to show you an example of what a Canvas app might look like. So I've got an application that was built for an airline, and this is for individuals who are on the ground. When a flight comes in, they're going to be checking in that plane. And so you'll see this is the first screen of the app here, where we're selecting what the airline is, the flight number, and the time of arrival for this flight. So we can fill this out. You'll notice this is formatted to be used on a mobile phone. So it is optimized to be used on a phone. This screenshot is of me running this on my desktop computer, though, in a browser. So it can be run either place, but it has been optimized for use on a phone. When I click check in flight, that button there at the bottom, it's going to take me to the next page, and then I'll begin to enter in very similar information, but continue through my process of checking in this airline. So putting in cargo weight and different information, and then putting the time that I've completed that activity. And so this app can go, multiple screens, however many we need, from screen to screen, filling out the information to have this individual quickly input the data as they're processing. So that's just a quick example of a Canvas app. I have some additional examples here towards the end we can talk about as well. But I do want to jump in and show you what the model-driven application experience, a designer experience looks like. So let's take a look at that. So this is not a screen of the designer. I've got one in my next slide here, but I just want to hit again on some of these components that we would be designing. So for these applications, this is a slightly bigger screenshot. You can see some of the standard UI components that Microsoft delivers. You've got a menu bar on the left-hand side. You've got navigation or command bars at the top of the screen. You can even see in this screenshot that it does say Dynamics 365. Again, Microsoft for these applications is providing their Dynamics 365 user interface, the newest version, for us to use with these applications. And so we spin these applications up, and then we're able to configure things like our forms and views. So the way that we visualize the data, the fields, how users can edit that data, lists of data, we can configure what those would look like. And then we can actually reuse those in multiple apps if we wanted to. So, we build it once and then we can deploy it everywhere is what term we like to use. So building it and then including it in multiple model-driven applications. And finally, one last bonus to these apps is that this UI is responsive. So this screenshot here is of a tablet, and using just a browser, you're looking at the application. But if I was to open this on my phone's browser, this application would actually reorder itself, and so that it stays visually appealing no matter which device I'm on. So as other applications or previous applications that you may have worked with, if you open up on the phone, you might get this, but just a really small version of it, which is not very helpful. So this application is responsive and it will reformat itself to whatever device that it's on. So the ability to reuse. So this is what the designer experience looks like for these model-driven applications. Again, it's not like the canvas where we're clicking and dragging, but instead it's clicking into these different components and choosing what we want to include in our app and configuring some of the options that are available to us. I've got one last screenshot, a little bit bigger here, of what the model-driven user interface looks like. Again, a menu on the left-hand side. You've got your standard navigation bar at the top, command bar below that. And then here we're looking at a view or a list of data. So those are pretty common screens. So I want to get into now just a couple quick use cases that I've done with some of my clients. And actually the first one is not a client, but just Velosio. So this first example is called the skill matrix problem. And what we were looking to do was identify the resources that we had and what certifications they may have gained and what skills they may have. And then try to identify where we might be, have areas we needed to focus on. So we began to look at our different teams, and we're broken up by the different Microsoft products, and different teams were using different tools to track their team skills. Everyone tended to have an Excel file, but every file was different. And I've got a screenshot here of one of those files. And so, with all this data being in separate Excel files, we really couldn't report or get a consolidated view of our resources skills. So what we decided to do was use these Power Platform tools, and we built a Canvas Power App. So I've got a screenshot here of the browsing gallery where you're scrolling through all of the potential skills that you may want to add to your profile. And so we built this application. Again, it's a mobile device, so consultants can easily access this on their phones. And then the big change was that this data is now being stored in the common data service for apps, in that online database. And what that means is we can now begin to access that data easily with Power BI and do reports and visualizations. We can also do approvals with Flow. So approvals process for approving these skills. We were able to do that as well. So an example of how, here at Velosio, we are using these tools within our own teams. But I want to show a couple examples from a couple clients. So this was a professional services company that had a process to set up a new project in their ERP system. And what they were doing at the time was maintaining a SharePoint list of these requests. And then multiple people were having to go into that list to review the details within SharePoint and approve that request. And then once the information of the request was approved, someone was manually creating that project in the ERP system. In this case, it was Dynamics 365 F&O. And so, that manual entry, people just sort of submitting these requests, was all hand entered, and there were oftentimes mistakes in that data. And so what we ended up doing to solve this problem was we built another Canvas Power App. You can see a screenshot here of just like the welcome page. And for this scenario, we left the data residing in SharePoint. But we were able to use the ability of Canvas apps to have multiple data sources on one screen and pull in data from F&O to validate what people were entering. So when you're entering a request, if you're selecting a particular customer to, I want this project created for this customer, we now provided a drop-down list of all the customers from the customer table in the ERP system. And people, that way that they were selecting from a predefined list and no longer just typing something in that may be incorrect. So we were able to reduce that data entry issue and the data validation issue. But the biggest thing was we were able to use Flow to do approvals so that someone could get an email and review the details within Outlook, and they never had to go into SharePoint to do that approval. And then once the approval came in, Flow was actually going to now takes that information and automatically creates a project within the ERP system. So no longer are we having to do manual entry. Flow is creating it for us, and now we just have to have someone come in and review it, make sure it's good to go, and approve that data final process there in F&O. But it's much quicker than it was before and less prone to error. So I got one more example here. I'm going to jump ahead. This is an example involving GP and Dynamics 365 for sales. So this was a client that had sales users that were working within Dynamics 365 for sales, but they needed to be able to see tracking information on orders within CRM. So this, the order information and this tracking information was in GP, but they wanted to be able to see it without having to leave their sales application. And so what we ended up doing was we built a Canvas application and connected it to GP. So we used our on-premise data gateway, and we were able to pull in the data from GP, from SQL, and visualize that order tracking information. And then the final step that we did, which you can see here in this screenshot, is that we actually embedded that Canvas application within the Dynamics 365 application, so that now sales users are in one screen. I'm on, this particular order within my sales app, and then just to the right-hand side, I can quickly see the data, a little window to the data that is within GP. It's in a SQL database maintained by GP. So a cool example of how we can combine these applications together, embedding within Dynamics 365 to really connect and you begin to see the power of this platform to begin, pulling things together that might have been disconnected. And so just to wrap up here, we've got, the three tools: PowerApps for building business applications with no code rapidly, efficiently; Power BI for aggregating, pulling in your data, building reports and dashboards, and gaining insights from your data; and then Microsoft Flow, that online workflow service that can connect to different applications and services and do a process that might span from SharePoint to F&O to CRM, all within one workflow automation. And then these three tools, of course, connect into the existing Dynamics Microsoft suite, connecting to the Dynamics applications, Office applications, perhaps standalone applications. We talked about how you can build custom connectors, and there's hundreds of connectors out there for other services, Google services. There's Salesforce. There's a number of different logos out there that you might not expect. And then ultimately we have the platform that sits underneath these things. We have the Common Data Service for storing data, and we have Azure that is behind a lot of these tools, providing our Azure SQL database for the Common Data Service, and giving us some additional tools to help extend and fill gaps that we may have. So that is the Power Platform. Hopefully this was helpful for you. I do want to end with a quick what's next. So Velosio is ready to help you utilize Power Platform. Contact your CSM or AM and talk to them about ways that you think you could use these tools. We do, we would be glad to meet with you, talk about a particular scenario that you may have. We do have a couple of specific things that we do. Summit is a 2-day event where we come in and we have a particular process in mind that we think we want to use Power Platform to do this, and we can come in and spend 2 days really evaluating that and trying to pull together a proof of concept or some sort of idea in that summit. And then we also, if it's a bigger scenario, we can do a larger sort of scoped proof of concept where we'll build something that you can show internally to say, hey, here's what the Power Platform does. And we also provide training. So if you'd like to be trained, or you just want some more information, or you want to get some additional resources looped into what these are, we can help you get there. And then finally, we do have another webinar next week. I'm going to get into a little bit more detail about the skills and the knowledge that it takes to use these three tools. That is next week, Thursday on the 27th. So that wraps up my presentation. I did mean to go a little bit shorter than I did. We only have 5 minutes left, but I believe we're going to open it up for questions at this time.
Yes, we certainly will. Thanks, Aaron. Great job. Appreciate that. Right now, currently, we actually don't have any questions, so that might be a testament to the great job you did presenting there. But we'll give folks a minute or two here. I know we only have a couple, but if anybody does have any questions, please type those in quickly to the question box there, and we'll see if Aaron can get to those quickly here. And certainly, if not, as Aaron mentioned, please don't hesitate to reach out to your CSM. They'll be your front line to help try to answer any of those questions or take any next steps, and certainly be happy to pull Aaron or other folks from Velosio into those conversations to see how we might be able to help. And thanks, Aaron, for mentioning your webinar next week, the 27th. If any of you would like to take a deeper dive and go a little further, please plan on attending that. That is out on our events page as well. So right now I don't see anybody chatting any questions over, so I think we'll let you go and give you a couple minutes back in your day here. So on behalf of Aaron and everybody here at Velosio, I certainly want to thank you for taking time out of your day to join us, and we look forward to seeing you on any of our future webinar events. So thanks again, and have a great rest of your day, everyone.